Hi, and welcome back, everyone, to the next chapter, which is on stress. So, just for something different, I'm going to begin this chapter with a little bit of a story. So, stress is familiar to all of us. Okay, I think we can't deny it. Sometimes we'd like to sort of, shove it down, shove it under the blanket or, stomp it down out of our conscious awareness. But we're all faced with stress. Sometimes it's low grade stress. Sometimes it's more acute, traumatic stress as well. But on a day to day basis, we all come face to face with stress. And so I just want to start with a little bit of a story. So a few years ago, I was juggling a lot of balls. So I had a lot of balls in the air. I had two young kids. I had a baby, a toddler at the time, a physiotherapy clinic. I decided to expand the physiotherapy clinic and move it into a commercial premises. I was in the middle of fitting out the premises. I had staff to manage, at the same time, like just struggling with the sleepless nights of a baby, of all the the breastfeeding issues and all that side of things that comes along with a newborn as well. And in addition to that, also trying to return to work myself, and also trying to be mum, be wife as well, and to run a household. Okay. And I think that to various degrees, like these are stresses that a lot of us are commonly exposed to. Okay. And what this at this period of time, so I over the years since then, I've come to realize that I have a tendency to be a little bit critical of myself. So I hold fairly high expectations of myself, and these expectations show up in the way that I want to do the best work for my clients. I want to uphold to my standard. I'm also quite critical on the way I'm showing up to life or to various things at times, and also sort of like critical in the way that I'm parenting and just wanting to essentially just do the best at everything, and this can be tiring, like it can be relentless. And in the course of the last few years, so lockdowns and COVID and that side of things, so what I found that these high standards and all of the balls in the air that I had at the time, they had to give. Something had to fall down. Okay, so COVID for me, okay, pushed me. It just made everything bubble up that little bit more. Okay, and the reason I'm telling you this story is that if we are aware of ourselves, okay, so part of this comes down to sort of being aware of our tendencies, our personality traits. Okay, a lot of it comes down to just general awareness, like body awareness as well. But if we're aware of ourselves, if we're real with ourselves, if we're able to check in to check in whether we're okay, whether we need to implement changes, okay, then essentially we're able to develop the awareness and the tools to manage stress and to shift out of this. Okay, and in this example that I gave, so at the time, so this actually threw me into my first ever sort of series of anxiety attacks, which was a really foreign thing for me because I've previously been, or had previously up until that date, been, quite strong and capable of, essentially just doing it all. And so that threw me on the ground, to be honest. Okay, and it was hard at the time, and I had to sort of pull myself out of that, and I had to revisit my values, which now you guys should all be experienced at because we've covered that in the last chapter or the last module. But what that showed is that I'd let a lot of my values slide. And so it was about a process of bringing them back into my conscious awareness and starting to, shift some of my attention and shift some of my focus to redivert this back into serving my values. Okay, so this helped me to shift a huge amount of stress at the time. Okay. But I want to take this further with you today. Okay, because we've covered the value side of things, but this is only just a small part of being aware of stress, and also being aware of the way that you're actually doing stress yourself within your body. Another large part of understanding stress is actually understanding physically how your body processes stress, physically how it holds its tension. Okay? And as a result, with this increase in awareness of how your body is doing its process for stress, it means then that we can identify earlier when we shift into these stress states. Okay? When we shift or nudge into them. And the earlier we can detect these states within us. So this is through being aware of a combination of the way that our body is processing the stress. It's also by using our values as a little bit of a navigation to sort of work out when we're veering slightly away from this and need to be redirected in. But the earlier we can identify that we're slightly coursing off track, then it is so much easier to find a strategy to shift you back into alignment, shift you back into calm, shift you back into finding that balance again in your life. So you don't have to wait until you hit rock bottom. Of course, you're welcome here wherever you are along the journey. If you're at rock bottom, that's fine. Let's use these strategies to work through it. But if you're in these more sort of, low grade sort of stages of stress, maybe you're not even aware that you're carrying a little bit of this stress with you because maybe it's such a normal state for you to be in. But if we can create the awareness of where we are now, then you are bringing back all of that power back within you to change. And similar to what we've just previously discussed with regard to pain, we need stress. Okay, we need stress. The stress is a way, again, that our body's communicating with us to let us know that we're slightly traveling off course. Okay, so it's there to bring that into our conscious awareness so that we can reroute, so that we can get back on track. Okay. Without stress, there's no contrast for calm and balance. So this is sort of like without darkness, there is no light. Okay, so we actually need stress. Stress is, again, healthy, but we need to understand the effects of stress. We need to understand the difference of acute stress versus chronic stress. We need to understand when we're holding ourselves in unnecessary stress. And as a result, we need to then learn to listen to it, and we need to then take some form of healthy action to start to navigate ourselves back on course. So in this video, we're now going to delve into the way that your body does stress, so the physiology of your body and the way that we can feel stress within us. The reason we want to do this is so that we can begin to identify the earlier signs of stress in our body. Because as I said before, if we can catch the stress early, we can shift it a lot easier. And we're also going to delve into a little bit of information with regard to the fight or flight response as well, and the various ways that this can play out in our life and how it can also turn into more of a chronic type of stress. Okay, so bear with me as I now move to a little bit of a PowerPoint slide that I just want to pull up. So just to talk about now the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. So this is a previously well-known response, previously known as the fight or flight response. And in more recent years, it's now been incorporated to include the freeze and the fawn response. And so when we are faced with stress, we are going to respond to that stress in any one of these ways. Okay. And the way that we respond, it can be dependent on a number of factors. It can be dependent on our coping mechanisms. It can be dependent on the event itself that we're exposed to and how traumatic or how life-threatening or how serious that event is. It can also be dependent on our personality type as well as our actual awareness of ourselves. So our internal awareness of where our state is. Okay, and I'll explain this now so that if we respond to a stress using the fight response, this is more evident with like an anger outburst, or we might show up as being a bit more controlling or the bully. We may have some explosive behavior, or we may be narcissistic to a degree. Okay. Whereas if we respond to a stress using the flight response, we could use any of the strategies here as far as sort of, becoming like throwing ourselves into work. Okay, so becoming a bit of a workaholic. We could revert to overthinking, overanalyzing things. We could panic, have some anxiety or some OCD type tendencies. Or we could have, difficulty sitting still. We sort of feel like we're sort of, busy on the go and sort of, going to, rush off or sort of, run off somewhere. Or we could also have some perfectionistic type qualities as well. Alternatively, for, various situations, we may respond using the freeze response. Okay, and in this freeze response, we sort of appear stuck. Okay, we might have difficulty making decisions. We might even dissociate ourselves from the actual situation itself. We might isolate ourselves or feel isolated, or we might revert to numbing strategies. And so numbing strategies is an interesting one because these can be, just vegging out in front of the TV as a distraction. It can be scrolling social media. It can be reverting to alcohol or medication to numb the feelings of stress. Okay. Or finally, we could respond using the fawn response, which is when we sort of lack a little bit more of our identity. We tend to have a lot looser or maybe even no boundaries. We revert to people-pleasing type behaviors. And we could feel overwhelmed or we could feel codependent upon another. Okay, so I'm now going to give you an example of the fight or flight response, which is actually seen in mammals. So this is such a primitive function and response that we have within us, okay, that even mammals experience this exact same fight or flight response. Okay, so in the example of the grazing lamb, so we've got a lamb in a nice open field, grazing on grass, having the time of its life. It's relaxed, okay, eating away. And then all of a sudden, it's exposed to a predator, okay? And as soon as it sees this predator, it has a sudden increase in its heart rate, an increase in its breathing rate. Its digestion slows in order to save energy for the lamb. Its muscles tight. It gets all ramped up. It's on edge. Okay? And it's ready to quickly flee the situation to find safety. Okay? So in this fight or flight response, there is a huge increase in cortisol and adrenaline, so an increase in all of these stress hormones. Okay, and these stress hormones generate all of that internal energy and tension that gives the lamb that quick ability to flee the situation, okay, and then to go and find safety. And so after a while, this lamb has escaped the predator. Okay, it's in a neighbouring paddock a little while down the road. It's safe. Okay. And so within an hour, the lamb has the ability to completely shift out of this stress state. So its breathing rate returns back to normal. Its digestion returns to normal. Its heart rate again returns to baseline, so it slows and it relaxes. Its muscles relax. Okay, it completely reverts back to its rest and digest state. Okay, and off it goes again, oblivious to whatever happened an hour ago, and begins grazing again in the field nearby. Okay, so this is an amazing example of how mammals, or animals I should say, but how animals do the fight or flight response. But what about humans? So we're complex beings. Okay, so the difference with us, we do this exact same response. We have the exact same ability to shift ourselves back to homeostasis, back to that rest and digest phase. But the difference between humans and animals is that we've got a long-term memory, a much, much better long-term memory than what an animal does. And so with this, we've got the ability to attach a story to that past event. We've got the ability to replay that past traumatic event. Not once, not twice, but again and again and again. Okay? And the interesting thing is here is that by replaying it visually within our minds, okay, we not only re-experience the event visually again, or elements of it, but we actually induce the exact same stress state, so the exact same fight or flight response that we had at the time of the traumatic event. We can replicate and induce that exact same stress state again and again and again. Okay, and this is where it's dangerous, because the more we're playing on it, the more we get used to being here. The more we sometimes aren't even aware that we're replaying it again, that we're in that stress state or stress event again. Okay? And this is where long-term changes happen. This is where we start holding, tension for long periods of time. Okay? This is where injury occurs. This is where pain occurs. This is where other health issues, health complaints, stress, anxiety, like psychological issues as well. So this is where all of this occurs, is that when we're not adequately aware of what we're doing, and when we don't have the strategies in place to shift out of this constant habit of replaying our stress and replaying our events. I want to talk a little bit more about chronic stress, because sometimes chronic stress, it doesn't have to be traumatic. It can just be a way of living. It can be so ingrained in us, so ingrained in our personality that we're just used to being here. Okay? It can be busyness. It can be having all the balls in the air. It can be just the self-pressure, the internal critic, the expectations that we hold in ourselves, or maybe that someone else puts upon us. Okay. But the scary thing is that with chronic stress, particularly low grade chronic stress, sometimes we're not even aware that we're in it. Okay. So it is that ingrained in us that we are not even aware that we are stressed. Okay, and so I'm going to bring up another example here of low grade stress. Okay, and I'll use the example of holding a pencil. Okay, so we're holding a light pencil out in front of us on an outstretched hand. Okay, and so with this pencil that we're holding out in front of us, okay, initially it's light. Okay, so the pencil resembles just a light, low-grade tension or stress. Okay, it's light, it's not heavy, doesn't require a lot of muscular control or effort to hold it there. Not really an issue. But after a period of time, as I hold it there for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, okay, it starts to get heavier and heavier and heavier. Okay, and if I continue holding that there for hours or days, okay, there is going to be a humongous buildup of lactic acid. My muscles are going to constrict and tighten and tremble and shake. I even put myself at risk of injury because I'm holding so much muscular tension there. Okay, and all of a sudden my arm feels like I can't hold the weight of the tension anymore. Okay, and I've got to drop it or let go or crumble. Okay, it's too much. Okay, I fall in a heap. And so this is the same as low grade stress. So we can have that low grade stress there in the background. Okay, initially we might just feel a little unease, little tension in our chest, in our tummy, maybe a little tension in our jaw or neck. Okay, but if we hold that stress there for an extended period of time without acting, without doing anything about it, okay, it will continue to build and build and build, okay, until that stress becomes more intense, until it starts showing up in the body as physical tension, as pain, or potentially as injury. Okay, and so this again, this low grade chronic stress works in the same way that pain does as well. So stresses can stack upon each other. So we can have a multitude of low grade stresses in our life that are just stacking on top of each other, that are pushing us higher and higher toward our threshold line. Okay, just waiting for us to crumble. Okay? And essentially, the more and more we shove that out of our conscious awareness, the more we ignore it, the louder the body screams at us. Again, through pain, injury, anxiety attacks, okay, illness, so a variety of different ways. But all in all we need to do is we need to ensure that we're bringing the stress into our conscious awareness, because if we're not labeling it, if we're shoving it out of the way, that's when we ignore it and it builds. Okay? But as we bring it inside our conscious awareness, it has to be seen. It has to be heard. Okay? This is when we can make action, we can intervene. If we can create early awareness of when we are moving into the state of stress, then it is so unbelievably easier to be able to shift ourselves out of it. Okay, and so with this in mind, I'm going to move on to the next slide. So we're actually now going to do a little exercise. We're going to learn to find out what your early signs of stress are. So I don't want to throw you into a full-blown, stress feeling, because that's not nice. But we want to we want to start to feel into how your body does stress, and we want to try and be more aware of some of the earlier signals, the earlier signs that show up before we move into that complete state of stress. Okay, and so in order to do this, I'm just going to get you to make sure that you're seated in front of your screen in a quiet space where you're not going to be disturbed. Okay, and I'm going to get you now, just to relax yourself into your chair. And I invite you to close your eyes. Feeling the weight of your thighs on your chair. Starting to bring your attention inside to your breath. Breathing at a rate that feels comfortable to you. Letting any thoughts that come just pass on by. And in fact, I invite your conscious mind just to wander away into the background, letting go, knowing that you're safe, and knowing that it's there observing. It can jump in at any time that you need. So as we breathe, I invite you now to recall a time when you have felt stressed. This may be a time recent, or it may be a time further back in the past. I want you to sit with this feeling of stress. I want you to pay attention to what you feel. What do you notice? Do you notice any tension building, any tightness or constriction, any muscular tightness? What changes to your breathing, to your heart rate, and to your posture? Are you holding any tension in your tummy? Do you feel any sense of movement or busyness within? Is there a colour or a temperature? Okay, so I want you now, we're going to shift out of it, let go. Breathe again. Breathe with ease, letting your lungs expand, letting your shoulders drop, your jaw drop. Okay, and let go of your tummy. Letting go of all those microscopic little muscles that are in your face and around your jaw. Okay, and we're just gently going to shift our awareness now just back into the surrounds of the room, bringing our conscious mind back in. And just when you're ready, just opening up your eyes and just coming back to the screen here. So nobody does stress the same way. And so the purpose of that exercise was to start to come within yourself, to start to be able to identify exactly your process for stress, so exactly what your body does, the small sensations, the feelings, what you notice within yourself. Okay, so you start to understand your process for stress. And as we understand our process for stress, this means that we have greater awareness of it. So we've got the awareness to start to tune into when we're just nudging into it. So, and if we can catch ourselves as we just nudge in the boundary of stress, before we're deeply entrenched in the full-blown swing of deep stress, if we can catch it early, this is where we can pivot it so easily. This is where we can pull our resources to the stress and shift ourselves out of it. Or we can bring it out into the open to create more awareness around it so that we can take our healthy action to move forward. So now I'm going to get you to go onto your quiz. And this is a nice, simple, easy one. And so in this quiz or workbook, we're just going to write down exactly what you felt and what you noticed then as you went through that exercise. So what was your body's response to stress? What did you feel? Okay, and I want you to list it, get it written down. Okay, and then after that, we're going to then work through and identify 5 stresses that you have currently going on in your life. So these do not have to be huge stresses. They can be just small, trivial, or sort of, like small overwhelms. Okay, but whatever's relevant to you. And again, the purpose here is to highlight it, get it out in the open, bring it into our conscious awareness. Because if we can bring that into our conscious awareness, then again, we can start to intervene and we can start to make action to reduce it. Okay, and after you've worked through those short exercises, there's a nice juicy meditation for you to get stuck into. So feel free to do that whenever suits you, whenever's the right time. But this meditation will just help you go again, just that little bit deeper. It'll pull in some more resources just to help you shift out of stress and to find and connect in with your state of calm and deep relaxation. And so with that, I want to congratulate you on getting through another juicy, jam-packed chapter here. But I know that the content that we've gone through so far on starting to understand now pain, understand stress, and understand how both of these processes are playing out within our body. I know that this information is invaluable for you, and it just provides that basis of awareness for you now to be able to take that healthy action and to start to move forward in your recovery. All right, congrats again, and I'll see you in the next video.